So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Priscilla De La Cruz. I go by she, her, hers. I am the Senior Director of Government Affairs at the Audubon Society of Rhode Island. We will tell you a little bit more about why we're here, Audubon's mission, but first I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to my colleague, Sue.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today to celebrate the pollinators and learn more about pesticide regulation. So my name is Sue Anderbois. I'm the Climate and Energy Program Manager with the Nature Conservancy here in Rhode Island. And we'll also share a little bit about that, but also want to celebrate our co-sponsors for this event today, the Conservation Law Foundation, and Meg Curran is here. And the City of Providence's Sustainability Office, and we have Director Koo right there, and Julia, and their Energy Fellow, whose name I forget, so if you can say it out loud, John, all here today as well, so thank you so much.
All right, so Audubon Society of Rhode Island, we are celebrating 125 years. We work to protect birds, other wildlife, and we do that all for the benefit of all living things and people. We conserve over 9,500 acres of land where there is a vibrant, diverse ecosystem, again, for the benefit of wildlife, but also for people. And that is a way for us to really walk the walk and show nature at work and put nature-based solutions. And actually walking in, you saw a sign, Nature at Work. And I do want to recognize Meg Kerr, our previous policy director, who was, Meg is back there. She is now retired, but we are thrilled that she is still around and supporting our efforts to continue protecting pollinators and birds and wildlife. So I will tell you a little bit more about what brought us here, and in terms of Audubon and the work that we have been doing. Before I joined the team about 8 months ago, we adopted a new strategic plan back in 2020, and that strategic plan really weaves in the climate crisis into everything that we do. That applies to our conservation work, how we manage the areas that we conserve, and how we look at ensuring that we are adapting to a warming climate. That also applies to our education program and how we talk about climate change literacy. That also applies to advocacy, which brings us here today. So a lot of the policies that Audubon is advocating for really center around addressing the climate crisis, but we also know that we need to adapt to climate change, and that we also need to put climate mitigation hand in hand with adaptation. And really, when we think about pollinators, that's really central to our mission. So one of our top priorities has been to continue protecting pollinators, because we know that they play a very critical role in our ecosystem, and we will need them as we continue to adapt to climate change. Sue, over to you.
Awesome, thank you. So the Nature Conservancy is, our mission is to preserve the land and water on which all life depends. And the Rhode Island chapter is part of a much larger global organization with folks in almost 80 countries and in all 50 states, including here in Rhode Island. And in Rhode Island, we conserve about 14,000 acres of land, and we've partnered with others like our friends at the Audubon Society, but also our friends at DEM and others on an additional almost 45,000 acres of land. And we manage our preserves in such a way to avoid the use of harmful pesticides, and are excited about the opportunity to really see some further regulations around neonic pesticides in particular. Should we talk a little bit about what's in these bills, and then?
Yes,
let's do that. So I am very excited to hear from our speakers about a few different things. So one, Director Koo from the Office of Sustainability will be telling us about pesticide-free PVD, which is an amazing program of the city to help reduce pesticide use across the city and protect our pollinators and our people. And also, Providence is doing a voluntary program because cities and towns across Rhode Island cannot regulate their own pesticides. That is preempted by the state. So we're really grateful to be here today also with Rebecca Kislak, my state representative, I'm very proud to say. Woo, Rebecca Kislak. Who for the second year in a row has sponsored really important common sense policy to help regulate neonicotinoid pesticides, which are a class of pesticides that attack the central nervous system. And the legislation, which she will talk about in just a few moments, what it really does is keep this harmful pesticide out of the hands of untrained users. So if there are a few specific instances where someone is like, this is the one thing I need to deal with this very specific thing, you can get trained, you can get a license, and you can use it in as safe a manner as possible. But I can't just pop over to Home Depot and buy some and just blast it across my yard, affecting not only the pollinators, but kids and pets and all people. So we're really excited and hope to see that pass this year. We also want to acknowledge some other legislators who've joined us this morning before we move to the rest of the speaking portion. Yes. Do you want to do that, or should I do that?
No, happy to. Senator Mack is here with us. Thank you for joining us. I see Representative Handy. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just looking around to make sure we're not missing anyone.
And there's, who did we miss? Rep. Handy, I see you pointing and I.
Oh,
and Mary, thank you so much. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And Director Gray from DEM could not be with us this morning, but we're really excited that Ryan Mulcahy has joined us in his stead. So thank you, Ryan.
And thank you so much. So before we get into the rest of our speaking program, as Sue mentioned, Audubon, the Nature Conservancy, and the urban forestry that is managed by the Department of Rental Management, and also right here in Roger Williams Park, managed by the city's Parks Department, are not using this harmful chemical that we refer to as neonics. So that has been part of the advocacy work that we have been doing at the State House, that this can be done. And what's really important is that we remove this from the hands of untrained users, and just showing that cities and towns, as Sue stressed, are really looking for these oriented type of solutions. And I know that other cities and towns have already reached out to the City of Providence and asked, how are you doing this? We want to make sure that this is happening also in our community, which is why statewide regulation around neonics is critical. So we hope that with you all, we can make this happen. And I'm excited that today we're going to hear from a great number of speakers that are going to tell you how we can work together to really protect pollinators and remove these harmful pesticides from untrained users like you and I. So I think we're good to move it along. Great, awesome. So next we will hear from the City of Providence. Come on up, Emily. Leanne and Wendy, I believe, might also be here.
Yeah, I think
awesome.
Leanne can welcome us to the Botanical Center.
Thank you, Leanne. Thanks for having us.
Good morning, everyone. So I always start my field trips off with that, the louder I speak, the more Minnie Mouse I sound. So, welcome to Disney Park style. So I just wanted to welcome everyone. Thank you, the Nature Conservancy, for being here, the Audubon, of course, for selecting us to be here, for all of you coming out this morning on this gorgeous, perfect day. We are always happy to partner with the Office of Sustainability. We do lots of work with them. One of the things that we are working on currently is helping the City of Providence become Bee City USA. Go Bee City. Yeah. Very exciting. Thank you, Emily. So, the Parks Department is very excited to lead the way as far as sustainability practices go. We understand the importance of pollinators and the importance of ecosystem and ecosystem services, right? So we do a lot of things and continue to improve and reflect. One of the things that we have done this year is consider how pollinators need all of those early clovers and that kind of thing. So this year we did low-mow and no-mow areas. We continue to look at how we can improve that and strategize around that. So this year that's very exciting. We reduce our carbon emissions. We're using electric mowers this year. So it's also very exciting. Whenever we can, we look at biodiversity, and we use that native plants in our garden design along with native trees. There are wonderful things always happening with the Providence Stormwater Innovation Center. We are thankful for them. We work wonderfully with them. We have a regional recognition with the work that we do here in the Parks Department as part of our Providence Stormwater Innovation Center work. We do so many workshops and lead the way in helping other municipalities understand how to properly maintain and work towards safer waterways. And lastly, one of the most exciting things that we have is a new building that's coming on board. It is our Gateway Center. And that building will be zero electricity, zero energy. We'll have electricity, just zero energy. Sorry about that. And we will have lots of little pollinator hotels, so you can see that in action when you come to visit that when that opens, Wendy, in July? August. So that opens in August. You are welcome to come see that. So I just want to say all of the amazing work that we do here, we are so excited to be on the leading edge of that, but more importantly, always excited to have such wonderful partners such as yourselves that are in the room. So welcome to the Botanical Center. We hope you visit often. Check out our biological control practices, which we are initiating throughout the parks as well. Always here for questions and hope that you visit. Thank you and welcome.
Hi everyone, thank you so much. Thank you Leanne and Wendy and the Parks Department for hosting us and for your leadership on pesticide-free PVD. The entire Parks Department is continually taking steps towards a pesticide and chemical-free future, and these best practices are captured in this report, which we're happy to have you all review. It's on our website, which we released last year actually in this exact location, along with our pesticide-free PVD campaign. And this work aims to serve as a model for institutions and residents across our city, as well as to help us continue to expand and institutionalize our work to be chemical-free. So as I mentioned, the pesticide-free PVD campaign launched last year to encourage residents, property owners, and businesses to consider the negative health and environmental impacts of using pesticides and other chemicals that we're discussing here today, and to take simple steps. Here's our top 10 tips to such as focusing on soil health, manually removing weeds, decluttering your yard, leaving your leaves. There's a Leave the Leaves campaign every fall, and leaving your grass clippings as natural fertilizer. So encourage you to check out the top 10 tips to take the pledge to go pesticide free, and we'll give you a little sign for your yard in contrast to the signs that warn you about chemicals on your yard, and help us spread the word about that campaign. Right now, over 100 residents across the city have taken the pledge across different neighborhoods, accounting for over 50,000 square feet of residential green space. And I'm just looking around at this tropical haven that that is managed without chemicals and pesticides, and gaining the inspiration that I too can avoid those chemicals in my modest urban yard. But our coordinator Julie did an assessment of what the barriers are to people really learning more about the harmful chemicals and taking those extra steps to look into alternatives. And it's just time in our day-to-day life, which is relatable. And so we're really just thinking about our responsibility to not only, we're really thinking about our responsibility to not only educate our residents about those health and environmental impacts of chemicals, but also to ensure that a quick decision that anyone might make when at a store to solve a quick problem in your yard or garden doesn't pose a serious risk to children that play in your yard, or to your pets, or to your birds and bees, to the river nearby. They're really cascading impacts across our entire ecosystem in our city. And so, as Sue mentioned, our public health education campaign can only go so far to reduce neurotoxic exposures across our city. We don't have the ability as a city to restrict the sale, distribution, and application of harmful pesticides like neonics. And that's why we're here with the Nature Conservancy and Audubon Society, urging the members of the General Assembly to take action and follow the lead of our neighbor states, Connecticut and Massachusetts, in restricting neonics. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. And Emily, that was not to rush her. I would never rush Emily. That was just for us to remember to project. But I think everyone heard Emily well, and also we're recording, so we'll be able to share today's program with others who are not here. And again, we cannot thank the City of Providence and the Office of Sustainability for helping to make this event possible, and for the leadership that they're playing in showing cities and towns as to how they can protect pollinators, but also how they can adapt to climate change and mitigate climate change by centering equity. So thank you so much for your work. So next, we're going to go ahead and kick it over to Representative Kislak. We're so grateful that she's here. Senator Miller could not join us. He is a sponsor on the House side, but
He's sponsoring the Senate side.
yeah, on the Senate side, yes. Senator Miller is sponsoring on the Senate side, but our House representative, Rep. Kislak, is here. Thank you, Rep.
Thank you.
The legislature is pretty particular that we can only sponsor things in our own house, in our own chamber. And I wanted to start by saying this is one of the gems of Providence where I think even those of us who live here, even those of us who come to the park kind of regularly, like sometimes we miss this, and I've only been here a few times, and I am so grateful to everyone for hosting this here in this beautiful spot today. So thank you. And I wanted to also thank my partners in government who are here, Senator Mack, Rep. Shawcross-Smith, and Rep. Handy, all champions for the environment. And thank you for being here and all of your work. And I want to thank my partners in government, in the state and at DEM, Ryan, thanks, and in the city, Emily, and everybody else for being here and doing such great work. And finally, I want to thank the Audubon Society, the Conservation Law Foundation, and the Nature Conservancy for really working hard together on this bill. And sometimes all of the thank yous that legislators and others make at the beginning of speeches are very pro forma. It's the thing we're supposed to do. Should we spend our time doing it or not? I wanted to take the time to do it right now because legislating is a team sport, and it's really important for all of us to work together to get good policy passed. None of us can do it alone, and it takes a really good and coordinated campaign of constituents, community members, advocates, legislators, leadership, everybody working together to make good things happen. And this bill, when it passes this year, is an exact example of really good teamwork. And so I wanted to thank everybody for working together on this. It's really important to protect our environment, and one of the ways that we can do that is by making sure that only people who are trained to do so handle dangerous pesticides like neonicotinoids. And so many of you have heard this already. I introduced it as a ban. I was happy to consider banning it. This is really good compromise legislation that's been worked on by all parties. And so I am incredibly hopeful that if we all keep working, which I know we all will, we will get it passed this year. And I also wanted to thank, thanks to Emily, I have a little pesticide-free PVD sign in my yard. And I think the last storm blew it away, but I have another one waiting to replace it. It's a thing that we can all do, and protecting our environment is individual, the local, the state, and the national and international levels, and that's the only way that we can protect our planet. And so I wanted to thank you all for being a part of the team that's going to get this done. So thank you.
There's more work ahead of us, so this is the first critical step we can take, and I'm so grateful that we're working with Representative Kislak and Senator Miller to further the work ahead of us. I want to introduce our next speaker. Sue has had more caffeine than me, so it's probably safe that she does. Or no, I always need lots of caffeine.
We are so grateful to Rep. Kislak and Senator Miller for sponsoring this legislation. And as we were thinking about who in our awesome city already is really doing the work to celebrate and promote pollinators, we thought of Jim Murphy at RIC and at Rhode Island College. Jim is the sustainability director at RIC and has done a lot of work to promote pollinators and getting students active, learning about pollinators and gardening. And we were hoping that he could share a few words. Thank you so much, Jim.
Good morning. It's very nice to see so many familiar faces at an event like this, so thank you for having me. Rhode Island College is 180 acres, 3/4 of which sits in the City of Providence, and the rest sits in the town of North Providence. So we did the pollinator pledge the other day, so I don't know how many signs you have left, but this is good legislation. This is something that we have a bee education center which consists of 2 beehives and an outdoor classroom. We have 2 other hives, one on the roof of the dining hall and one in the campus garden. And starting next Wednesday, we will be running our field trips for various schools, most of whom are in the City of Providence. We have St. Augustine's next week and Achievement First. So the one thing that we tell these students is the 3 things that are harming bees, and that's called colony collapse disorder. It is a combination of monocropping, which we really don't have a problem with in Rhode Island. It's the varroa mite, which is an insect that we treat our hives with a formic acid, which is put in after we extract our honey. And then the neonics. And we make every student who comes into the Bee Education Center pronounce that word. And we do it for a reason, because it's education, education, education that is going to drive positive legislation like this. We need to be able to spread the word and keep up with, you know, the people that are trying to stop this legislation from happening. You have to have good debate on it, and you have to make sense with it. So our students are you know, constantly exploring our campus, knowing that it is a pesticide-free campus. They're very involved with the Bee Education Center, and especially when they're extracting honey that's going into the dining hall. We have an executive chef that uses that honey in many different recipes, and we've even changed over the coffee house in the student union. It's now called the Rhode Island College Bistro. So honeybees are very, very, we may be the anchor men and the anchor women, but the bees are becoming a fast mascot for Rhode Island College. And I just want to say thank you again for having me, and you can find out more on our website. If you just type in Bee Education Center, you'll find all those recipes that you can cook with, and hopefully we'll have some honey the next time I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I've known Jim for a number of years, and I'm also an alumni of Rhode Island College, so it's great to see the things that are happening on campus around sustainability, and thank you for all your work, Jim, on that. Next, we have Dr. Charles Clarkson joining us. He's part of the Audubon team. He's our avian research director. I am thrilled that I get to work with Charles because he's doing really great research on many things that impact birds, but also specifically, he's studying the impacts that neonics has on birds. So Charles, why don't you come up here and tell the group what you're up to?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. I do have my comments written because I want to inform not only you, but I understand this is going out to social media, everyone, of the science behind neonicotinoids and basically what they're doing to the landscape around us, how they're impacting not just bees, but invertebrate populations as well. And I do believe that one of the biggest failings of science as a whole is its ability to bridge the gap between science and the general public in a meaningful way. So that's largely what I try to do when I have an opportunity to present in front of an audience such as yourselves. So I'm basically saying I'm not going to be able to keep this within 5 minutes. It might go 8 minutes.
He warned me about that in
I did. So at the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, our primary concern is whether our ecosystems are fully functional and biodiverse. Biological diversity is the linchpin of our planet. It supports immense productivity, like song sparrows, which in turn allows all aspects of life. The health of our habitats is not only critical to the organisms we aim to protect, like the song sparrow, but it is also essential to human existence. I think it goes without saying that everyone here today has an emotional connection to the natural world around us. The presence of you yourselves this morning indicates your care and your desire to do what you can to preserve our natural systems. But our connection to the world is much more fundamental than this. Without functional ecosystems, there is no capacity to support human life whatsoever. Our most important relationship with nature is therefore one of reliance, and this relationship is mutual. We rely on the natural world for everything, and the natural world relies on us as stewards to act in the best interest of the endeavors of nature, not solely the endeavors of man. In the words of John Muir, when one tugs at a single thing in nature, he finds it attached to the rest of the world. Neonicotinoids are a class of chemical that has been in use in the United States since the 1990s, and today it is the most widely used insecticide in the world. These chemicals were modeled after the naturally occurring chemical compound nicotine, and the name neonicotinoid means new nicotine-like insecticide. Despite the claim that neonics have a low toxicity to vertebrates, they were designed to be 5,000 to 10,000 times more toxic to invertebrates than the pesticide DDT. As other classes of pesticides have declined in use, neonics have grown dramatically in their presence across the landscape. And as is typically the case, scientific research is racing to keep pace with this increase in use to elucidate the impacts of these chemicals on the environment and on our biodiversity. Neonicotinoids are water-soluble, which makes them particularly attractive to users due to the increased root uptake by plants, but contributes to their pervasiveness in the environment and the ability to negatively impact downstream habitats. To date, the European Union has banned the use of neonics, citing them as, quote, a worldwide threat to biodiversity, ecosystems, and ecosystem services, end quote. The chemicals have already been labeled as restricted use products in states such as Vermont, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. New research is demonstrating the unintended consequences of the use of these chemicals on non-target species, and the results of these large and comprehensive studies are sobering. They include documentation of both direct toxicity as well as indirect sublethal effects that can alter population dynamics of birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and non-target insects. An important distinction should be made about the impacts of any toxin on a population. Often, regulating agencies determine the toxicity of a compound by its contribution to outright mortality. The term lethal dose 50 is used to denote the concentration of a substance that would result in the mortality of 50% of a studied population. This metric has been used to determine a chemical's impact on wildlife populations for decades, but is severely ineffective at identifying sublethal impacts that can also contribute to population decline. Acute and chronic accumulations of low levels of a toxin within an individual can result in no increase in overall mortality, but can severely impact behavior, leading to weight loss or disorientation. Often, these individuals are unable to contribute to population growth through successful reproduction and effectively serve to reduce population sizes to the same degree as outright mortality would. This is precisely what many studies are illustrating regarding the impacts of neonics on communities of organisms. Low-level contaminations from neonics have contributed to the inabilities of bees and other pollinators to forage effectively and navigate to their hive, and are a major contributing factor in the documented decline of these species. I feel it pertinent to highlight this point about toxicity, because a principal argument made by those opposed to restricting the use of neonics is that they are less toxic than their counterparts. As I stated earlier, neonics have a relatively low toxicity to vertebrates. But to put things in perspective, a single treated corn seed contains enough neonic to kill a bird the size of a blue jay. And even a dose that is 1/10 of that contained on a single seed is enough to result in severe body mass loss, and disorientation in birds. A recent study documented migratory birds consuming even this small amount of neonicotinoid pesticide lost 6% of their body mass within 6 hours of consumption and delayed their migration by an average of 3.5 days in order to regain their lost mass. 3.5 days of delay is substantial when you consider that many bird species can complete an entire breeding cycle in just 10 days. 3.5 days is enough to result in a failed breeding attempt or the inability to attempt breeding at all. So populations decline despite low or no mortality. I wanted to clarify the science behind the argument being made. A study published in 2020 and analyzing countrywide data sets from the US found a 4% per year decline in grassland bird populations between the years of 2008 and 2014, which is coincident with a period of increasing neonic use across agricultural areas in the United States. Another argument commonly used against restricting the use of neonics is that they are applied as a seed coating, and few, if any, seeds are spilled during planting. Birds have evolved over the course of 160 million years, during which time they adapted to scratch, dig, peck, and extract seeds from the surrounding landscape. To argue that birds will not find and exploit a seed, whether it is spilled or recently planted, is to ignore their impressive evolution. And indeed, a study published in 2020 documented 16 species of bird and a further 14 species of mammal eating neonic-treated seeds at a spill site. A scientific study published just last month documented that 89% of individuals within a population of sandwich terns had detectable levels of neonics in their feathers. The importance of this study cannot be understated, as it documents the ubiquity of these chemicals within our ecosystem. As fish-eating coastal species, the natural history of terns should in no way make them candidates for coming into contact with neonics. However, because of the ability of these chemicals to infiltrate aquatic ecosystems, persist for long periods of time, and be transported downstream from areas of application, they are contaminating coastal environments and the seabirds found foraging within them. This, along with all other studies and the actions taken by the EU and other US states, highlights the urgency with which neonics need to be strongly regulated before their negative effects on the environment become too great to reverse, or at the very least, mitigate. This summer, the Audubon Society of Rhode Island will begin analyzing birds that breed on and migrate through our protected land to determine the pervasiveness of neonics across the landscape. Birds that breed in or remain on Audubon property throughout the year should be insulated against the effects of these deleterious compounds. This is a central tenet of land conservation, that protection of land and its resources provides safe harbor for the biodiverse communities found therein. The fact remains that neonics are highly water soluble and capable of being transmitted across the landscape to areas far from the application site itself. A recent study in Canada documented the presence of the compounds in 91% of tested wetlands. And as Audubon protects over 1,000 acres of forested wetland habitat in the state, this prompts the question, are our birds safe? From the rapidly expanding scientific research on the subject, the answer is a resounding no. The obvious next question is, can we make it safer? And the answer to that is up to you. And I would just say that since this is going out on social media, the answer to that is up to you. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you will move forward with some steps of action to make sure that neonics are regulated in the state of Rhode Island. Thank you.
I also want to acknowledge Blaze Smith Hill Catering. Thank you for the delicious pastries and for joining us this morning, and also the rest of the Audubon team for making this happen. Paige, Robin, and Jeff, thank you all. And also Eli would like to recognize you for supporting our efforts to educate the rest of the public on the harmful use of neonics and helping us get this bill across the finish line. So thank you so much. Sue, want to close it out and tell folks how they can participate in helping us get the bill across the finish line?
Most definitely. I'd also like to thank my team at the Nature Conservancy. So Sheila's here and Kai as well. This is Kai's third day. So really glad that he could join as well. And yeah, I think I was actually getting some chills while Dr. Clarkson was speaking, and I think it just really shows the importance of getting this over the finish line. So there are some of these postcards at the table behind Jeff Hull. Thank you, Jeff. And these give you some of the information, not everything that Dr. Clarkson just shared, and also information about the number of the bills. We would urge everyone here to call their legislator and either thank them for supporting it, if your legislator happens to be Rebecca Kislak or one of the other bill sponsors, or urge them to support it and to pass it. And if you're looking for other things you can immediately do, there's a list here, but also you can immediately sign on to the pesticide-free PVD pledge on the Sustainability Office's website, and also check out the list of 10 things that Emily shared earlier about things that you could already be doing to reduce pesticide use in your home. So we hope everybody is really excited about action now and taking some steps to protect not only pollinators, but also people, and reduce our harmful use of neonic pesticides. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.